The night my husband threw water on me in front of everyone, I didn't scream. I didn't slap him. I smiled. Because in that moment I realized he'd just given me everything I needed to destroy him. The dining hall of the Evercrest Hotel glittered under the chandeliers, crystal glasses catching the light like scattered diamonds. Around me, the city's elite murmured over plates of seared scallops and truffle-infused risotto, their laughter smooth as the wine they sipped. My husband, Marcus, sat at the head of the table, his tailored navy suit hugging his broad shoulders, his smile practiced and effortless. I adjusted the strap of my emerald green dress, the silk cool against my skin. The evening had been uneventful, until Marcus leaned over to refill my wineglass, his fingers brushing mine. "Careful," I murmured, pulling my hand back. His smile tightened. "You're being paranoid." "I'm being precise," I corrected. "You know I don't like my glass too full." A flicker of irritation passed over his face. Then without warning he lifted the carafe and tipped it over my lap. Ice-cold water splashed across my thighs, soaking through the silk, the shock of it sharp as a slap. Gasps rippled through the table. My breath hitched but I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Marcus leaned back, his voice light as if this were a joke. "There. Now you don't have to worry about it being too full." The room fell silent. Across from me, Lillian, Marcus's business partner's wife, pressed her lips together, her manicured fingers tightening around her fork. Beside her, her husband, Richard, coughed into his napkin, his eyes darting between us. At the far end, young Daniel, Marcus's protégé, stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. I exhaled slowly, then reached for my napkin, dabbing at the water with deliberate, unhurried motions. "Excuse me," I said, standing. My voice was steady. "I'll be back." I walked out, the weight of their stares pressing against my spine. The bathroom was empty mercifully. I locked the door, then turned to the mirror. My reflection stared back, dark eyes, high cheekbones, lips painted a deep crimson. No tremble. No tears. I peeled the ruined fabric away from my skin, the silk clinging stubbornly. A knock sounded at the door. "Elara." Lillian's voice, tentative. I didn't answer. She knocked again. "I brought you a spare dress from my car. It might not be perfect, but..." I unlocked the door. Lillian stood there, holding a garment bag, her expression unreadable. "Thank you," I said. She stepped inside, setting the bag on the counter. "He shouldn't have done that." I unzipped the bag. A sleek black dress lay inside. "No," I agreed. "He shouldn't have." Lillian hesitated. "You're not going to make a scene, are you?" I smiled. "Why would I?" She studied me, then nodded. "Good. The investors are watching." "But, of course. Reputation over everything." I changed quickly, then handed her the wet dress. "Tell Marcus I'll meet him at home." Her brows lifted. "You're leaving?" "I have work to do." The valet brought my car around. A sleek silver Lexus, its interior smelling faintly of leather and jasmine. I slid into the driver's seat, my fingers curling around the wheel. Marcus had humiliated me. In front of everyone. And he thought that would be the end of it. I drove home slowly, the city lights blurring past. By the time I reached our penthouse, my mind was clear. Methodical. I stepped inside, the marble floors cool under my bare feet. The house was silent. Marcus wouldn't be back for hours. Good. I had planning to do. The penthouse was too quiet. I sat at my vanity, running a brush through my hair in slow, measured strokes. The rhythmic motion helped me think. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, but Marcus still wasn't home. Good. I set the brush down and opened the top drawer, pulling out a small notebook, one he'd never seen. Inside I had already begun compiling a list. Marcus Evercrest's weaknesses. Pride. He couldn't stand being ignored. 2. Control. He needed to believe he held all the power. 3. Reputation. His entire empire was built on perception. I tapped the pen against the page, considering. Tonight had been a test, an escalation. The water wasn't just carelessness, it was a message. You are beneath me. But Marcus had forgotten one thing. I knew him better than anyone. The elevator chimed at 1:17 a.m. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway before the door swung open. Marcus strode in, his tie loosened, the scent of whiskey clinging to him. He paused when he saw me. "You're still up." I I closed the notebook and slid it back into the drawer. I was waiting for you. His lips twitched. To apologize? I tilted my head. Should I be the one apologizing? His smile faded. He walked to the liquor cabinet, pouring himself another drink without offering me one. You embarrassed me tonight. Did I? You walked out. And you threw water on me in front of 20 people. He took a slow sip, his eyes locked on mine. You were being difficult. I laughed softly. So it's my fault. He set the glass down too hard. Don't push me, Alara. I stood, smoothing my robe. I wouldn't dream of it. I walked past him toward the bedroom, leaving him standing there, seething. The next morning I woke before dawn. Marcus was still asleep, his breathing deep and even. I slipped out of bed and dressed quickly. Black slacks, a cream blouse, my hair pulled into a tight knot. The city was just beginning to stir as I stepped outside. I needed coffee. And information. The Blue Note Cafe was half empty at this hour. I took my usual seat by the window, ordering an espresso. Across the room, a familiar face glanced up from a newspaper. Daniel. Marcus's protégé. He hesitated when he saw me, then nodded in acknowledgement. I lifted my cup slightly in return. A minute later he approached. Mrs. Evercrest. Daniel. I gestured to the empty chair. Join me. He sat, setting his coffee down. I wanted to say I'm sorry about last night. I sipped my espresso. For which part? His fingers tightened around his cup. For not saying anything. Interesting. I studied him. Early 30s, sharp features, a nervous energy beneath his polished exterior. Marcus had plucked him from obscurity, molded him into the perfect right-hand man. But loyalty had its limits. You're not obligated to defend me, Daniel. He frowned. Still, it wasn't right. I leaned forward slightly. Tell me, how long have you worked for Marcus? 5 years. And in that time, has he ever done something like that before? Daniel's jaw twitched. Not in public. But I sat back. I see. A silence stretched between us. Then quietly he said, he's been under a lot of pressure lately. The Kensington deal is falling apart. I arched a brow. Is it? He looked surprised. You didn't know? I know many things, I said lightly. But not everything. Daniel hesitated, then lowered his voice. The investors are getting cold feet. If it collapses, Marcus stands to lose a lot. I smiled. How unfortunate for him. Daniel blinked. Then slowly he mirrored my expression. Yeah. Unfortunate. By the time I left the cafe, I had 2 new pieces of information. 1. Marcus's empire was more fragile than he let on. 2. Daniel wasn't as loyal as Marcus believed. I tucked those facts away like cards in a winning hand. The invitation arrived on thick cream-colored cardstock, embossed with gold foil. The annual Evercrest Charity Gala. Marcus tossed it onto the kitchen island with a smirk. You'll need to be on your best behavior for this one. I picked it up, tracing the elegant script with my thumb. Will I? He poured himself a glass of orange juice, the condensation dripping onto the marble. The press will be there. The investors. Everyone who matters. He took a slow sip, watching me over the rim. No more incidents. I smiled. Of course not, darling. The night of the gala, I chose my dress carefully. Deep red. Backless. The fabric clung to every curve. The slit high enough to draw attention but not enough to be crass. I fastened my grandmother's diamond choker around my neck. A piece Marcus had always hated. It's ostentatious, he'd said once. Good. When I stepped into the living room, Marcus's eyes darkened. You're wearing that? I turned in a slow circle. Don't you like it? His jaw tightened. Change. I tilted my head. No. For a moment I thought he might argue. Then he forced a laugh, smoothing his tie. Fine. Let's go. The Evercrest ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, the air thick with perfume and the murmur of money. Cameras flashed as we entered, Marcus's hand firm on the small of my back, a possessive grip disguised as affection. Smile, he muttered. I did. Wide enough to show teeth. We made the rounds, shaking hands, exchanging hollow pleasantries. I played my part perfectly, the elegant, doting wife. But my eyes kept drifting to the crowd, searching. Then I saw him. Nathaniel Cole. He stood near the bar, his tailored tuxedo a shade darker than anyone else's, his salt and pepper hair just long enough to be deliberate. Our eyes met, and his lips curved in a slow, knowing smile. Marcus noticed. "Who's that?" I sipped my champagne. "An old friend." "Since when do you have friends I don't know?" I didn't answer. An hour later I slipped away, finding Nathaniel on the terrace. The city lights stretched below us, a sea of gold and shadow. "You look well," he said. I leaned against the railing. "You look surprised." He chuckled. "I heard rumors. About you and Marcus." "Did you?" "That he's gotten careless." The wind tugged at my dress. "Careless is one word for it." Nathaniel studied me. "Why are you still with him?" I turned my glass in my hands. "Why do you think?" He exhaled, shaking his head. "Christalara. You always did play the long game." I smiled. When I returned to the ballroom, Marcus was waiting. "Enjoy your chat?" he asked, voice low. I adjusted his tie, my fingers lingering just a second too long. "Immensely." His hand closed around my wrist. "Don't embarrass me tonight." I leaned in, my lips brushing his ear. "Or what?" He froze. I pulled away before he could respond, melting back into the crowd. Marcus didn't speak to me on the ride home. The silence was thick, the kind that settles like a weight between two people who know exactly how to hurt each other but are waiting for the right moment. He kept his eyes on the road, fingers drumming against the steering wheel in a rhythm just slightly too sharp to be casual. I watched the city blur past the window, counting streetlights. When we reached the penthouse, he finally broke. "How do you know Nathaniel Cole?" I slid off my heels, flexing my toes against the cool marble. "We went to college together." Marcus's laugh was harsh. "Try again." I turned to face him. "Why? Does it matter?" He stepped closer, his cologne sharp and cloying. "It matters when my wife is whispering with a man who owns half my competitors." I held his gaze. "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you threw water on me in front of 20 people. His jaw twitched. I walked past him toward the bedroom. The next morning, Marcus left early. No note, no goodbye. Perfect. I waited until I heard the elevator descend, then moved to his study. The room smelled like leather and expensive whiskey. His desk was immaculate, not a single paper out of place. But I wasn't interested in the desk. I knelt, running my fingers along the baseboard until I found the slight unevenness in the wood. A press, a click, and a small panel slid open. A safe. Marcus thought I didn't know about it. I entered the code, our wedding date, because he was nothing if not predictable, and the lock released with a soft snick. Inside, a stack of documents, a USB drive, and a single unmarked key. I took the USB. The Blue Note Cafe was quieter at midday. I claimed my usual table, ordered a cappuccino, and plugged the drive into my laptop. Files. Dozens of them. Financial records, contracts, emails. Most of them encrypted. But one folder stood out, labeled simply, KC. Kensington Deal. I opened it. And froze. The numbers didn't add up. Not even close. Marcus wasn't just at risk of losing the deal. He was bleeding money. "Mind if I join you?" Lillian stood beside my table, her manicured fingers resting on the back of the empty chair. I closed the laptop. "Of course not." She sat, smoothing her skirt. "I saw you at the gala. That dress was memorable." I smiled. "Was it?" Marcus didn't seem to like it. Marcus doesn't like anything that isn't his idea. She tilted her head. "You're different lately." "Am I?" "Less patient." I sipped my coffee. "Maybe I'm just done pretending." Lillian studied me for a long moment. Then softly, "Be careful, Alara." I met her eyes. "Or what?" She didn't answer. Nathaniel Cole called on a Tuesday. I was in the middle of dissecting the files from Marcus's safe when my phone buzzed, his name flashing across the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Alara." His voice was smooth, the kind of tone that made you lean in even when you knew better. I'd like to see you. I tapped my fingers against my desk. Why? Business. Whose business? He chuckled. Yours if you're smart. I paused, then glanced at the clock. 1 hour. The Vantage Lounge. The Vantage Lounge sat atop the Lexington Hotel, all floor-to-ceiling windows and low, intimate lighting. Nathaniel was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table with a perfect view of the city. He stood as I approached. You look like you haven't slept. And you look like you've been waiting for this. He grinned, unrepentant. Guilty. I sat, ordering a gin martini before turning back to him. Talk. Nathaniel leaned forward, elbows on the table. I know about the Kensington deal. My fingers stilled around my glass. Do you? I also know Marcus is desperate. He swirled his whiskey, ice clinking. And desperate men make mistakes. I took a slow sip. What's your point? My point, he said, is that I'm prepared to make you an offer. I arched a brow. Walk away now, he continued, before it all comes crashing down. I laughed. And let him off that easy? Nathaniel's smile faded. This isn't about revenge, Alara. It's about survival. I set my glass down with a quiet click. You don't know me as well as you think. Marcus was late again that night. I sat in the dark of the living room watching the clock tick past midnight. When the elevator finally chimed, I didn't move. He stumbled in, reeking of bourbon and someone else's perfume. Alara. His voice was rough. Why are you sitting in the dark? I stood slowly. Where were you? He loosened his tie, avoiding my eyes. Business. With who? He froze. Then with a smirk, jealous. I stepped closer, close enough to see the smudge of lipstick on his collar. Pale pink. Not my shade. No, I said softly. Just disappointed. I walked past him, leaving him standing there in the shadows. The next morning I followed him. Marcus was careless when he thought he'd won. He didn't check his mirrors as he pulled out of the garage. Didn't notice the unremarkable sedan trailing 3 cars behind. He drove to a boutique hotel on the south side of the city. I parked across the street, watching as he strode inside. 20 minutes later she appeared, a blonde in a cream-colored trench coat, her steps light, her smile smug. Lillian. Interesting. I took out my phone and snapped a photo. The files on the USB drive had layers. At first glance they were just financial records. Dry spreadsheets, transaction logs, the kind of thing that would make most people's eyes glaze over. But buried in the metadata, in the notes attached to wire transfers and shell company aliases, was a name I hadn't expected to see. Victor Hale. A ghost from Marcus's past. A man he'd sworn was out of his life for good. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. If Victor was involved in the Kensington deal, then Marcus wasn't just desperate. He was reckless. Daniel called me at noon. We need to talk, he said, voice tight. I twirled a pen between my fingers. About. Not over the phone. I gave him the address of a small bookstore downtown, one Marcus had never set foot in. The shop smelled like old paper and bergamot, the shelves crammed with first editions and forgotten memoirs. Daniel was already waiting in the back corner, pretending to browse a collection of 19th-century poetry. He didn't look up as I approached. Marcus knows you took something. I plucked a book from the shelf. Does he? He tore his office apart this morning. Daniel's fingers tightened around the spine in his hands. He thinks it was me. I flipped a page, feigning disinterest. And why would he think that? Because I'm the only one with access. His voice dropped to a whisper. Alara, if he finds out. He won't. I slid the book back into place. Unless you tell him. Daniel finally met my eyes. What are you doing? I smiled. What he should have seen coming. Marcus was waiting when I got home. He stood in the foyer, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to the elbows. The safe door hung open behind him. Where is it? His voice was dangerously calm. I set my bag down. Where's what? He crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping my arm. Don't fuck with me, Ilara. I didn't pull away. You're hurting me. His fingers dug in harder. You think I care? I held his gaze. No. But you should. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then with a snarl, he shoved me away. Find it, he said, turning for the door. Or I'll ruin you. The elevator doors slid shut behind him. I rubbed my wrist, watching the numbers descend. Too easy. Lillian's invitation arrived in a cream envelope, sealed with wax. Dinner at my penthouse. Just us girls. 8 p.m. I traced the embossed script with my thumb. It wasn't a request. It was a trap. And I had every intention of walking into it. Lillian's penthouse was all sharp angles and cold elegance. Glass tables, steel accents, a color palette of whites and grays that made it feel more like a museum than a home. She greeted me in a silk slip dress, her blonde hair perfectly tousled, a martini already in hand. Ilara. She kissed the air beside my cheek. I'm so glad you came. I handed her a bottle of wine, a 1982 Bordeaux, Marcus's favorite. Wouldn't miss it. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. We sat at a table set for two, the first course already laid out, oysters on ice, their shells gleaming under the pendant lights. Lillian lifted her glass. To secrets. I clinked mine against hers. And the people who keep them. She took a slow sip, watching me over the rim. You've been busy. Have I? Marcus is panicking. She set her glass down. That's not easy to do. I shrugged. He's always been dramatic. He thinks you're working with Nathaniel. I picked up an oyster, letting the briny scent fill my nose before swallowing it whole. And what do you think? Lillian leaned forward. I think you're playing a dangerous game. I smiled. Then it's a good thing I know the rules. The third course arrived. Seared duck, the skin crisp, the meat bleeding pink onto the plate. Lillian twirled her fork. He's going to leave you. I didn't flinch. Is that what he told you? Between the sheets. Her knife screeched against the plate. Oh, don't look so surprised. I dabbed my lips with the napkin. I know about the hotel. The lipstick. I tilted my head. Does Richard know? Her knuckles whitened around her glass. You're bluffing. I reached into my clutch and slid the photo across the table. Marcus entering the hotel, Lillian leaving 20 minutes later, her coat barely hiding the dress underneath. Lillian went very still. Here's what's going to happen, I said softly. You're going to tell me everything about the Kensington deal. And in return, I won't send this to Richard. Or the press. Or Marcus's investors. Her breath hitched. You're insane. I took another bite of duck. I'm winning. By the time dessert arrived, a dark chocolate torte with a raspberry glaze, Lillian had cracked. The Kensington deal was a house of cards. Marcus had been funneling money from other projects to keep it afloat, but the investors were getting suspicious. Victor Hale was a silent partner, a man with ties to banks in Zurich and Cayman. And if the deal collapsed, Marcus would lose everything. I stood, smoothing my dress. Thank you for dinner. Lillian's voice was hollow. What are you going to do? I paused at the door. What I should have done years ago. The morning after Lillian's dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He knows about the USB. Be careful. I deleted it immediately. Marcus had made his first mistake. He tipped his hand. Now I knew he was watching me. And nothing made a man sloppier than paranoia. I found Daniel in the lobby of Evercrest Holdings, pacing near the elevators. His usually crisp shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose. When he saw me, he grabbed my arm and pulled me into a vacant conference room. He's losing it, he hissed. He had IT pull all my access this morning. I can't even get into my own email. I leaned against the glass wall, cool against my back. What did you expect? Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I didn't think he'd. That's your problem, I cut in. You never think. He stared at me. You're not even rattled. I smiled. Would you like me to be? The door swung open. Marcus stood there, his expression unreadable. Daniel went pale. Marcus didn't look at him. Ilara. My office. Now. Marcus's office was all sharp lines and arrogance. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk the size of a boat, a single framed photo of us from years ago, back when we still pretended to like each other. He shut the door and turned the lock. "Where is it?" I sat in the chair across from his desk, crossing my legs. "Where's what?" He slammed his hands on the desk. "The USB." I sighed. "Marcus, if you're going to accuse me of something, at least be specific." His jaw clenched. "You think this is a game?" "No," I said softly. "I think it's a reckoning." For a moment he just stared at me. Then he straightened, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have no idea what you're playing with." I stood, smoothing my skirt. "Funny. I was about to say the same to you." Nathaniel was waiting outside when I left the building. He leaned against his car, sunglasses hiding his eyes. "Need a ride?" I slid into the passenger seat without answering. He pulled into traffic, silent for a full minute before speaking. "He's going to come after you." I watched the city blur past. "I know. You're not afraid?" I turned to him. "Are you?" Nathaniel exhaled sharply. "I made you an offer, Lara. Walk away. Let me handle him." I studied his profile, the stubborn set of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. "Why?" I asked. "What do you really want?" He didn't answer. But he didn't have to. That night Marcus didn't come home. I sat by the window watching the lights of the city flicker to life. Then I picked up my phone and sent a single text. "It's time." The photo of Marcus and Lillian went viral at 8:03 a.m. By noon, it was the lead story on every financial blog in the city. Evercrestio's secret affair with partner's wife. The shot was grainy but unmistakable. Marcus holding open the hotel door, Lillian's hand on his chest, her lips parted in a laugh. Richard Kensington withdrew his support for the deal within the hour. I watched the fallout from my balcony, sipping jasmine tea as my phone buzzed with notifications. Marcus called 17 times. I sent everyone to voicemail. Daniel showed up at my door just past 1, his tie askew, his hair a mess. "Did you do this?" I stepped aside to let him in. "Do what?" He shoved his phone in my face. The photo, the headlines, the stock ticker showing Evercrest Holdings plummeting. "This." I took the phone from him, scrolling idly. Not a great angle for him. Daniel made a strangled noise. "Elara, Jesus, do you realize what you've done?" I handed the phone back. "I've leveled the playing field." He stared at me. "He'll destroy you." I smiled. "He can try." Marcus finally cornered me at the penthouse that evening. He looked like hell. His suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, the stubble on his jaw more shadow than style. "You." The word came out ragged. I set down my book. "Me." He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand raised. I didn't flinch. He froze. I arched a brow. "Go ahead. Give me another headline." His hand trembled. Then slowly it dropped. "You ruin everything," he whispered. I stood, stepping so close I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "No, Marcus. You did that all by yourself." The board called an emergency meeting at dawn. I watched from the hallway as Marcus stormed into the Evercrest conference room, his tailored suit failing to hide the tremor in his hands. Through the glass walls I could see the shareholders, men who had once laughed at his jokes, who had toasted his success, now staring at him with cold, calculating eyes. Daniel stood near the door, gripping a folder of documents. He caught my gaze through the glass, hesitated, then gave me the slightest nod. "It's done." By noon the news broke. Evercrest Holdings CEO ousted amid scandal. The article detailed everything: the affair, the financial discrepancies, the withdrawn investors. There was even a quote from Victor Hale, denying any involvement with Marcus's reckless dealings. Marcus's empire had crumbled in a single morning. And he had no one to blame but himself. He found me on the terrace of our penthouse, staring out at the city he no longer controlled. "You." His voice was raw. "This was all you." I turned, sipping my coffee. "Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" He lunged, gripping my wrist hard enough to bruise. "I'll ruin you." I didn't pull away. With what money? His breath hitched. I leaned in close enough to whisper. The accounts are frozen. The board has disavowed you. Even Lillian won't return your calls. I smiled. You have nothing. His grip loosened. For the first time in our marriage, I saw something unfamiliar in his eyes. Fear. I left him there on the terrace, staring at the skyline he could no longer claim. The elevator doors slid shut behind me. And for the first time in years, I breathed freely. Nathaniel found me at the rooftop bar of the Lexington, 3 weeks after Marcus's fall. The city glittered below us, indifferent to the ruin we'd left in our wake. He slid into the seat across from me, his sharp suit a shade too dark for summer, his smile knowing. You were always one step ahead, he said, swirling his scotch. Even when I thought I was playing you. I sipped my martini, the gin crisp and biting. You weren't playing me, Nathaniel. You were testing me. He laughed, low and warm. And you passed. With flying colors. The breeze carried the scent of his cologne. Smoke and cedar, expensive and deliberate. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Now that it's over, he murmured, let me take you to dinner. I arched a brow. Is that a business proposition? His gaze didn't waver. It's a date. I held his stare for a long moment, then lifted my glass in a slow toast. We'll see. Daniel called as I was leaving. His voice was lighter than I'd ever heard it. Just wanted you to know, I start at Coal Industries next week. I smiled. Nathaniel's giving you a chance? After everything? He exhaled, almost laughing. Yeah. He is. Pause. Then quieter. Thank you, Alara. I watched the sunset bleed into the skyline. Don't thank me yet. That night I stood on the balcony of my new penthouse, mine bought outright with the last of Marcus's hidden assets, and raised a glass to the city. To the end of an empire. And the beginning of something far more interesting. The end.